effective discussion. And being trained in those 5 strategies has taught me how to actually design discussion in my room, like allowing for think time and for times for students to talk to each other, and just for me, how to structure my questions for those students.
I think crediting competency is really important too. I had never thought to write a kid's name on the board with what their idea was. That never crossed my mind. And I think that is something that's extremely powerful. It empowers the children, and all of a sudden you see kids that are engaged because somebody thinks their idea is good enough to write on the board, and other kids are using their idea because they thought it was good enough to use to start to solve a problem. So I think the 5 strategies, it's really important to use them and have used them in a classroom before you try to implement one of the formative assessment lessons. Because when you implement the formative assessment lessons, you need to embed those 5 strategies into it for it to be as effective as it can be.
And learning how to use those 5 strategies really does help to build the environment of your classroom, so that your kids can participate effectively in these lessons. They feel like their answers are important, or what they have to say will contribute to the learning. So crediting competence and actually using those 5 strategies are extremely important to be able to successfully implement a formative assessment lesson.
And I think, it's just so important to have those strategies, and it makes the classroom, it's no longer they're just sitting there and getting info. They're active in their learning, and it's not them just sitting there and getting information and then maybe spitting some back out at you when you ask them. I think the 5 strategies really give students, if you implement them in your classroom and you try and implement them more on a daily basis and not just during the formative assessment lessons, because those may only be every one time a unit or every other unit, since there's not an abundance of them yet. But it's those 5 strategies that if you embed those in your teaching practice and you try and implement them every day, that's what helps kids with their problem-solving skills and to persevere, and for the kids to do more thinking, them doing more instead of you doing more, which is what needs to happen and what the math practices are.
And the structure of the formative assessment lessons are set up so that the students are doing a lot of the thinking, and they're spending a lot more time thinking about the math in multiple different representations. They may have to see a graph and match it with a table or a verbal explanation, or even explain why a graph looks the way that it does. And the structure of the FALs really does allow for students to really think and dive into what they're doing, rather than a teacher just explaining, here's this, here's that, here's this, here's that, go, do it. So it really does give kids a lot more time to think and practice and really get involved in practicing the standards.
Another thing that we think is really important for the formative assessment lessons, when you are taking the pre-assessment data and you're looking at it to form your feedback questions and to decide who's going to be paired up for the collaborative part of the activity the next day, it's really important to take kids and pair them up homogeneously. If you don't, if you have a kid that does well and a kid that doesn't, then for the activity you're going to have less discussion between the two students, maybe no discussion, because the one kid that understands a little better is just going to do it. If you have 2 kids at the same level, there's much more discussion between them on what's going on, what they're trying to do, whether something that they're pairing up, if it's a card sort, is right or not. It's really important to pair up kids that are at the exact same level, or as close as you can, because sometimes it doesn't work out exactly right, because, it's not like you got to pick your class, but as close as possible, it's more effective.
And then too, if you pair a high kid with a low kid or a kid who struggles, the one thing that those two kids are going to learn is the higher kid, I'm smart, and the lower kid, I'm dumb, and I don't have anything to contribute. So when you pair kids homogeneously for these activities, the students feel like they have something to contribute and something meaningful, rather than one having to do all the work and the other one just saying, okay, you're smart and I'm dumb, so you do it all.
You're going to be engaged, but sometimes kids will get stuck and they'll stall, and so you just need to ask them a few questions or make sure they're explaining what's being paired up and why they paired it up, how they know. It's really hard for one teacher to make it around to all 15 groups, and with a lot of the formative assessment lessons, they're card sorts and they have multiple layers. But you're not going to give them the next layer till you know the first layer is they've completed it. So it's really hard if there's only one teacher in the room. At least time for a building coach, somebody to come in, and so there's at least 2 teachers in the room. The kids get so much more out of it, and it runs so much more smooth. It's hard with only one teacher, it really is, especially if you have a classroom of 30. Now, if you have a smaller classroom, then maybe just the one main teacher is fine.
Our head principal was a math teacher, so she
Right.
came in.
So she comes in
works
and
with
will
them.
help.
And the kids love that.
Oh yeah,
They love
they
that.
love it. They're like, oh, the principal actually knows math. So yeah, it's good.